Welcome everybody. You are on Shedding the Bitch Radio, and I am Bernadette Boas, and I am sitting here talking to Shelley Hammell. How are you?
Good.
She is the president, CEO, founder, guru, you name it, of Sage Alliance Inc. right here in Atlanta, as a matter of fact. And she's also, more importantly, a guru at leadership development and performance branding. The new black of branding. I'm kind of coining that for her. But she'll explain that in a minute. But I want to welcome you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Great to be here.
Well, because I know I do a lot about branding. And meaning I don't coach on it, or I don't, work with it. It's a huge part of my business, is, branding myself, branding my business and whatnot. You are very unique in that you deal with performance branding, which takes it up another level. Now, before we dive into that conversation, though, because we are here to talk about revving up your performance brand, I want to make sure everybody understands how she kind of differentiates herself in the marketplace around this area, because she's got the uniqueness of blending a 20-year corporate background with now her entrepreneurship being with Sage Alliance Inc. So let me do an intro of her, and then we're going to dive into this very deep conversation about how you can really move to the next level and amp up what it is that you're achieving at work or at home, with your brand each and every day. Shelley Hammell is an accomplished executive coach, seasoned speaker, skilled workshop facilitator, and of course, president, guru, everything around Sage Alliance Inc. She is a recognized expert in leadership performance and team optimization. Her extensive work as an executive coach and team facilitator with high potential leaders enables her to learn and use proven strategies that work. Shelley has over 20 years of practical business experience, and like I said, she's worked in corporate all over the world and spans sales, marketing. She's launched new companies, brands, and products. She's hired, trained, and led cross-functional teams of various sizes, and knows what it takes to grow top talent and deliver measurable results. Shelley's expertise in performance and team optimization enables her to directly impact individual and organization-wide performance. So, like I like to say around here, she just doesn't talk it. She actually gets results. All right, so keep that in mind. And she works across the business, from sales to marketing, customer service, operations, human resources, IT. All of you CEOs out there, don't worry about it. She can handle whatever it is that you need to do with your high potential leaders all across your business. Now, I also saw in here that she has extensive international experience, from Canada to Europe, Asia Pacific, South America. She's looking to go to Australia if anybody wants to send her down there. Actually, I am, but I'll deflect it on her. And she's a skilled facilitator, graduate of the Coaches Training Institute, that's CTI, and the worldwide leader in coaches training, and is certified in several assessment tools. Okay, this is really important, because we're going to talk later on about how to leverage assessments within your individual and or company practice. So she uses Berkman, Herman Bain Dominance, Hogan Leadership Forecast Series, and Myers-Briggs Step 2, and a whole slew of others. Don't worry about it. She'll make sure, she's the expert, she'll make sure you get the right assessment in your hands for yourself or your team or your company, in order for you all to kind of get a really good idea of what your leadership and performance brand is.
Let me give you an example. So I had a client that I was working with, and basically she was brought into her organization because she was a driver. She got things done. She made things happen. And so they brought her in and said, we need someone here who could do that. We have so many initiatives. So they bring this woman in, and she's doing all the stuff that she was known for, and driving things forward, moving them as fast as she could. And ultimately what happened was
she was aggressive, she was assertive, she was getting things done, but she wasn't doing them in a manner that matched that corporate culture. And that's really what performance branding is all about. So she was a driver, a go-getter. She came from a dog-eat-dog type world.
Okay, let's put it here. Let's break it down here. She started describing that, and all I said to myself is, she's a bitch. And I know that world. I certainly know that world. So, okay, so I can definitely picture this woman.
Yeah.
So what would you do?
So how I worked with her from a coaching perspective was, and so this is not about changing who you are. When we talk about branding, it's about really getting clarity about what you're good at, where do you bring value, and how does it help the organization. And that's the piece that's missing when people talk about personal branding. It's, you know what, Bernadette, you're a driver, you're great at this, but it doesn't connect it in any way to the environment or the culture you're working in. What we did was say, okay, you really have two options here. And the first is, I could get out because this culture doesn't match who I am and what I do. Or I love this company, I love this culture, I love what I'm doing, but maybe I need to tweak it a little bit. And in her case it was, how can I build bridges more? How can I be more collaborative so I'm still the person who gets things done? I'm able to bring disparate people together. I'm able to kind of see how to take something and bring it to its outcome. But how do you do it in such a way that, again, aligns with the organization? Okay. And that's really the difference in performance branding.
And you're also not kind of assuming that it also has to be that type of difficult boss or manager or leader of any kind that leverages performance branding. So let me ask you another question. All right, let's use that individual. And let's call her Bernadette, shall we? The old Bernadette. Let's call her the old Bernadette for a minute. Just to kind of create a picture, right? We have this very kind of overbearing boss, let's just say it that way. Now, who's calling you in? Who's kind of saying, okay, Bernadette has an issue? Because I know for me, for 25 years, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
And no one was kind of like hitting me over the head with it because I was producing so much.
Right.
So who's calling Shelley and asking her to come in and deal with this situation?
Usually it's the boss. I mean, it's usually the boss of Bernadette or whoever. And so they see a top talent, a high potential. You had the numbers, you know, great outcomes. But again, it's about the approach. And so typically it's the boss that calls me in. HR might call me in. And again, it's not, as you said, it's not a problem employee.
Right.
It's typically a high potential. And what we're really talking about is the approach of how they get there.
Gotcha.
And that's where performance branding really focuses on, not just the brand, but what's the approach? How do you go about it?
So it's also proactive. It's also like part of a development plan. It's just part of the ongoing development of talent.
Yeah.
Proactively. So you don't have to wait for a problem. You don't have to wait for a situation. For all you HR, because we have a lot of HR executives that listen to our program, as well as managers of all kinds, both corporate and entrepreneurial. It's something that you could build in to your plans, build into your training and your development.
Yeah,
yes?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Okay, so we know how it differs. You go in, what kind of results? Like what, so you change Bernadette. What kind of, so after you've worked with me, what are you expecting, or what is that boss that called you in expecting to see?
And if you don't mind, we don't try and change you. Really, what Sage Alliance is doing is really trying to zero in on what are your individual strengths. So what is it you're bringing to the table? You have that ability to drive through things, get things done, figure out, you've got that perseverance. So what are those individual strengths? Next, what we look at is, so now what are your contributions? What is it that you're bringing to the table? And those are usually measurable things that we can look at. So what are those contributions, and what's the impact to the organization? And once we know that, then we can determine what that value is. So where do you add value in the organization? So people could say, you know what, Bernadette, you really add value here. When I bring you in, I know that we're going to be able to bring people together, solve on really difficult problems, come up with creative solutions, and ultimately on the back end, come up with something that really is going to help the organization. So it's really very measurable. And again, the focus is not so much on change, but rather Self-awareness.
Oh, that's good.
Self-awareness.
We talk a lot about that here. You have to be self-aware and enhancement.
Yeah.
Now we talk a lot because it also sounds like you're talking about too is we talk a lot about honoring your riches. Shed the bitches, honor your riches, which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like know your skills, know your talents, know your strengths, know the characteristics, about you that make you a strong individual, let alone a leader and a contributor, and then enhance on that.
Exactly.
And then find those gaps, and because I never like to talk failures or anything like that, but find those gaps and then either learn them or enhance them, or develop them.
That's exactly right. And it really is, it's zeroing in on the things that make you most effective and the things that make you less effective. And sometimes we just don't realize. So even just going back to our Bernadette, she was effective. So when we looked at the outcome, things were going really well. But when we looked at the approach, they weren't going so well.
Right.
And so what we did was we looked at what was ineffective in her style. And so it was more that aggression and that, come on, you have to do this versus getting buy-in. And once she was aware of that, she still was getting the outcomes, but instead of people not necessarily wanting to work with her, people were happy. And they really felt that they were all driving to the same goal.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure we touch on that, but I also want to make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of Shelley. So remind me to ask you about whether or not she wanted you around. Okay. So hold on. Or anybody, because it gets under the cover, so to speak.
It does.
What you do.
It does.
Okay. So before we go there, but we're going to go there. So Sage Alliance Inc. Their website is thesagealliance.com. You can find her on Twitter as Shelley Hammell, at Shelley Hammell, 2 L's and an E in Shelley, and Hammell, 2 L's. And
2 M's.
And 2 M's too, yeah. And then you can Google her, you can find her everywhere. And then she's on Facebook as Sage Alliance, as Shelley Hammell. She's everywhere. LinkedIn, everybody should be linking in with everybody. So make sure you link in with her as well. And please, if you link in with her, send her a personal note that says, Shelley, by the way, I saw you or heard you on Shedding the Bitch Radio, and I'd love to link in with you. It's always good. Personal branding, performance branding. Performance branding is to make sure that you're, differentiating yourself. Don't use the standard LinkedIn note. Personalize it. Let them know that you're important. Okay. Let's see, what else do we need? Oh, I do want to mention this because I don't want to forget. Her website, thesagealliance.com, has tons of resources. She has a blog. She provides a lot of articles. And one of them I want you to look for is Increase Your Effectiveness as a Leader. It's on her blog. It's in her resource page too, but she's updated it and enhanced it. And the enhanced one, along with 1 or 2 other blogs that support this article, is out on her website, thesagealliance.com. Increase your effectiveness as a leader, align your brand to your performance brand. So take a look for that because she's got a lot of great information there. How can someone go about gaining clarity? So I want to work on my personal performance brand. I kind of know stuff about myself, but yet when someone asks me, hi, how are you? What do you do? It's always that typical job thing. So how do you instruct them or guide them to really leveraging performance branding when it comes to their message?
Yeah. So really some very easy steps. If you're just first and foremost, make sure you know what your strengths are. And there's so many different ways to do that. And first, you can take a look at just old performance reviews. I say old, but your performance reviews, just what themes are bubbling up, what strengths are you seeing over and over. Next, you can take an assessment. There's tons, you talked about all the assessments I do. There's tons of assessments. You can take one of those, many companies offer them. Or if you're not with a corporation, you could, Strength Finders is a great book. There's an online tool that you could use. So whether it's that, the HBDI, Myers-Briggs, Hogan, Berkman, there's tons of things out there. I could go on.
Individual as well as for corporations, so yes.
Yeah, so take an assessment. If your corporation has the ability, get a 360 done. If not, do your own 360. I have all my
Explain that
clients.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have all my clients go out and say, hey, Bernadette, would you spend a few minutes and describe me? What 3 or 4 words come to mind when you think of me? What do I do well? What don't I do well? And then you take all of that. You don't have to speak with 1,000 people. I mean, speak with a handful, 5 to 10 people, and just get a sense. You're not doing a statistical survey, but just get a sense. What are people saying about you? And the thing that I find is most people are surprised when they get that feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, you're all going, really? I mean, where their surprise is not the negative, you know, the, oh, I wish you wouldn't do that so much. It's actually on the positive, because we take what we do for granted.
Absolutely. But at the same time, because I did this like a long time ago before I started writing my book. I did it with my sisters during our beach vacation over cocktails. Don't do it that way, because they really will get honest with you. But if you're going to go to somebody, and what she kind of like not glossed over, but you want to get people that are going to give you the truth. You don't want yes people. You don't want people who are going to tell you what you want to hear, because the purpose of it, to your point earlier, is self-awareness.
It is.
And you can't improve and you can't grow and you can't develop your performance brand, the new black.
I love that.
Yes. But you can't unless you're willing to hear and learn from whatever feedback you're given. So you definitely want to find people, even if it's those 5 or 10 that she mentioned, that are going to be direct with you and honest with you. But just like with my sisters, I was pleasantly surprised at some of it, not surprised at others, because I was getting to know myself much better then. And what's interesting, which I think you're great at too, is you do it, and then you come back after you've worked with someone like Shelley, and you come back and you do it again, and it's really exciting to see the change.
Yeah, as it evolves.
Yeah, as it evolves. And,
Yeah.
Your core doesn't change necessarily, but you may have forgotten about it for a while. So yeah, I think that's huge.
And it's a great reminder I do it for myself. I always go out and get feedback and say, am I on course? Am I following the right course that I want to be on? And it's just always kind of checking in and getting feedback and seeing
Absolutely.
any tweaks I have to make. And I actually have people then put this in a SWOT analysis. So for those that are in corporate may know this a little bit better, but strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And really, you just make a grid, and all of this, again, is on my website, so all these tips and such, so lots of resources, but really, what are your strengths? What are the, we in the business never call it weaknesses, we call it development opportunities. But, what are your
weaknesses?
What are your weaknesses? What are the things that are tripping you up? And then, if you think about it, opportunities are, how can I leverage these strengths that I have? And am I doing it in such a way, am I being intentional? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I find, we all kind of do this, but we're so busy. We work in such a dynamic world that the boss says jump or the boss says do this and we do it. Now it's about being intentional and going to the boss and saying, hey, here's some things that I know that I'm really good at. So I'm really good at building bridges, bringing disparate people together. What are some other thoughts or opportunities that you can think of for me that I should get involved in?
Absolutely.
And that's usually when I'm coaching someone, when the boss says, you know what, we've got this project, you would be great on it. I didn't even think about it. Mm-hmm. And then last, of course, the threats, which are, what are the things that trip you up? And we all have things. We all have, I call them derailers, but things that get in the way. Going back to your corporate bitch, there's things that about style, about people.
We call them bitches here in this world.
So, what are the things that trip you up? And to be aware of those so those don't, again, kind of get in the way. Because a good brand, whether it's a personal brand or a performance brand, is all about consistency.
Absolutely. And it's about performance. Because I'll tell you what, people will say that they can get away with skills and talent. From the athletes to the stars to, corporate executives. They can get away with just their skills and their talents and their results. And I am here to tell you, I am proof to tell you that at some point you might get very successful, but at some point you're going to come crashing down when your performance brand is not in alignment with the culture that you're working. I don't care what you say. You can look yourself in the mirror and convince yourself and lie to yourself all you want. But somebody like a Shelley is also who kind of made me look in the mirror really hard. And until you do that, do you really even like totally leverage and optimize what you already are capable of doing?
Exactly. It's optimizing, and as you said, I mean, we have so many examples in the sports world, in the political world of where things have gone awry. And so really kind of, again, kind of keeping that focus of how you're aligned is what's so important.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Okay, so how do leaders become even more effective through personal branding? I mean, how do they really, what else can they be doing to really impact performance branding in the leadership development end? Because you do a lot there in that space as well.
Yeah.
And then how do they differ, or how do you kind of bring them together?
It's kind of inherent. So we keep talking about personal branding and performance branding. To me, performance branding is leadership. It's truly about leadership. It's not just about, oh, here are my strengths now, I know what those are. It's about how do I apply those strengths. It's about how do I take those to the next level. And when leaders have clarity about what their strengths are, they're intentional, they're able to then, the actions and the behaviors that they take are more purposeful and therefore more aligned with the outcomes that they want to achieve. So just kind of thinking about this is, and I had done some research, by the way, which I was going to share with you and your viewers.
Absolutely.
But where most leaders struggle, I asked a question, where do you struggle as it relates to branding? And 75% fell in really three categories that are ultimately the same. One was, how do I describe my brand? So I don't even know how to describe it. So that's what makes leaders effective, being able to do that. I don't know how to communicate my accomplishments, which is huge.
Yep.
And then last, it was about, I don't know what people think about me and my brand. And so for me, it's really the intersection of those three things. When you know that and you can answer that, that's what makes you effective as a leader. So just kind of taking that one step further, it's really about getting visibility for yourself. So being able to stand up and say, hey, I am somebody who's really good at driving outcomes. I'm really good at bringing people together or building bridges or whatever it is that you're doing, and being able to do those things. Once you've got clarity and being able to vocalize that, that's truly what makes a leader effective.
Now, we're talking vocalizing it as far as even demonstrating it. We're not talking about like running around and beating your chest and woohoo. Now, you should honor your riches as we talk about. But I think what she's saying is important. Is because, and I think, like for me, I know that when I started shedding all that crap, is all I can say. Sorry if you don't like the word, sorry. And I really started paying attention to what my strengths were and then where my areas of development are, and really working on those as well as while enhancing continuing to enhance the strengths. My whole, even just my posture and the way I walked into a room and the way I kind of conveyed a message, whether it be about my brand or not, spoke volumes of my brand.
Yeah.
It spoke volumes of my leadership. It spoke volumes of, so it's not just in words either. It's even demonstrating how you sit at a table or where at the table you sit or, those kind of things.
And what you're really talking about is approach. I mean, so you didn't change ultimately who you were. You're
Correct.
Still at the core the person who you are, but you changed your approach.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about. We're really talking about what is that approach? What makes me most effective? And if I'm sitting at that table and I look like I'm going to jump down your throat or something of that sort, then I'm going to, I might agree to do something, but then kind of the backstory is I don't really want to do that.
Right.
And so it's all about approach, and that's really what we're talking about. It's aligning your strengths and seeing what those outcomes are, and now saying, is that approach, so how do I get from A to B?
Right.
And that's really where performance branding comes in.
Okay, you're learning a lot here. Okay, plus I would hope you're having fun, because I know I am. And we are talking to Shelley Hammell, President and CEO of Sage Alliance, Inc., but more importantly, she is a executive coach, leadership, and performance branding guru who works all over the world. So check out thesagealliance.com and then link in with her, Shelley Hammell, and then just Google her. She's everywhere. Twitter, Shelley Hammell, You can find her on Facebook, Shelley Hammell. You can also find her under Sage Alliance. And she does great blogging and article writing. And definitely check out her website, the sagealliance.com, because she has tons of resources and articles, of which we talked about earlier. Go and get that one, all around increasing your effectiveness as a leader. So you are listening to Shedding the Bitch Radio, and I am Bernadette Boas, talking to my guest and friend, Shelley Hammell. All right, so what are things you want our viewers to do? Like, what could they, because I always love to give them tips and whatnot, although we're not done. We're far from being done. But I want to kind of weave in some of these tips for you. What could they do to really start kind of moving forward with their performance brand?
Yeah, so we talked about some of the things for self-awareness. So ultimately, one, gain some, additional self-awareness, whether it's through 360s or assessments or getting feedback. So that's really the first thing.
Can I also make a suggestion there too? If you don't want to go and buy like an expensive 360 assessment, and I don't think they're expensive.
They vary. But
yeah, they vary. I've even done Survey Monkeys.
Yeah.
Free Survey Monkeys. I've made a list of like 8 questions, and then even that gives people an opportunity to be anonymous. I always get that word messed up. Should they choose to. But you're hoping that you're talking to someone that is a trusted individual in your life. So they should want to be upfront and honest with you. So just placing phone calls could be your 360. And then 360, now let's define it a little bit more so too. It's looking at someone that manages you, right? Mm-hmm. Someone that's a peer to you.
Yep.
Someone that you may manage or is subordinate to you.
Exactly.
And then, of course, family and friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Am I missing anybody?
No. So, just depending what your world looks like.
Correct.
You're really
Correct.
trying to get an overall view, and different people that sit in different parts of an organization are going to have
that's a good
different
point.
ways to look at you, different perspectives.
That's
And
a very
so,
good point.
even if you don't manage people, try and get people from different parts in the organization. So, maybe you work with IT as an example. Well, who are people, your peers, or maybe people that work for those people that you interact with. So you're trying to get people at all different levels from all different kind of perspectives in the organization.
That reminds me, I have a question for you. That reminds me, because, and we've talked about him before, one of my mentors, for many years, Robert, he, at one point in his career and in all of our progressions, he actually headed up an organization of like 2,500, 3,000, but wasn't direct tied to them. So no one reported to him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember walking in his office one day, and he had like this whole kind of org chart up on the wall of all the different teams around the world that he was kind of responsible for, but yet not direct line to. Mm-hmm. And he says, how is someone supposed to, maybe I shouldn't disclose this, but he asked, how am I supposed to lead when I don't have any direct accountability? They don't have it, necessarily back to me, which surprised me, because he was the type, and I think you're stressing it here, is you don't have to have anybody reporting to you to lead. And I think he knew that. I just think he was kind of all of a sudden going, okay, this is a great opportunity and a great position to be in, but then how do I ensure that I can get done what I need to get done when no one really is accountable to me?
Yeah.
So is that what you're also helping with when it comes to performance brand and, him learning if, had he engaged somebody, learning how to leverage that?
Yeah, what you're talking about, leadership, the definition of leadership doesn't have to be, I have all these people reporting to me.
Yeah, remember that?
Really,
it doesn't make you a leader just because you have people reporting to you.
In fact, it in many cases doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's about having influence. It's about people want to follow you. And that's why I get back to that example of my client, who we're calling Bernadette, but in all seriousness, her way to influence was, you have to do this,
Right.
and it was too aggressive, and so
Yeah.
people weren't following her. But once she understood that her approach wasn't working, and that she needed to refine that a little bit, and she sort of started getting under, kind of understanding things from their perspective, getting in their shoes. Once she started doing that and saying, hey, this is really good because, here's the benefit because, once she started doing that, people were then wanting to be part of what she was doing.
Right.
And that's really what leadership is all about. It's being able to influence people whether they report to you or not.
Absolutely.
So whether you have a team or not, this works, because what we're really trying to get at is, how are you most effective, what's working, what's not working, and really how to close the gap. We're not trying to ultimately, I know I keep saying change you, we're not trying to say, oh my God, you're this or you're that. Rather, we're trying to, I look at it as you get this nice little package, it's wrapped up, we're putting the bow on it. We're looking to just kind of refine what you've got.
Or you're adjusting it.
Yeah, just some things work better than others.
Right.
Let's face it. I mean, have
Right.
you ever, tried to get into a locked car? You could stick a hanger in there. Whatever. There's tons of approaches. Which is the most effective approach? That's all we're trying to get at here.
And I want to stress something too, because I wish I had somebody like a Shelley, or I wish I had somebody like you, who may work for somebody like who I was. And I just have a favor to ask you, okay, community? If you see someone, people used to say to me, they wouldn't follow me, and they didn't necessarily, I won't say hate, that's a pretty strong word, but they didn't necessarily love working with me.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't mind working for me because I definitely had their back, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I got the job done.
Mm-hmm.
But my approach, they would have done anything to have it changed.
Yeah.
Now that said, and this is where I have a plea for all of you, is if there's somebody that you work with that may be one of these individuals that she's calling Bernadette, then please do her a service and tell her, or at least advise her maybe to seek out, and you can go about it by saying, you know what, you'd be great if only, or advise her to go and work because she's really hurting herself, or you're holding yourself back. Find a way. She may not hear it. He or she, by the way. She may not hear it, but at the same time, it'll start seeping in. Because the worst thing is to not say anything at any time, and then they don't get the development help that they need. Now, on the flip side, because Shelley works with just any leader, again, if you don't lead and you don't plan to ever be a manager, because there's people that don't, then these strategies that you're talking about are very important for you just to be happy, even in the culture that you're working for.
Yeah, that's true.
Because, I don't even know what the percentage is of the number of people that aren't even happy with the company that they work for, but they're doing it because they need the job or they need the money. And why do that as opposed to find ways and work with somebody like Shelley to find strategies and approaches to work with the culture, or decide that, yeah, maybe that culture isn't for you, and trust me, there's other cultures that are out there. So, I mean, there's just so many facets and so many ways that people could be leveraging performance branding.
Exactly. And that's why, for me, the biggest part of it is, again, that self-awareness and getting those other perspectives. Because I'm making a big assumption here, but most of you out there, you're doing great jobs. And you're probably happy doing what you're doing. But those of you that might want something else, maybe want to get ahead or whatever it is, how do you get there? And usually, and I've found this so often, is what got you to where you are now isn't necessarily what's going to get you to the next step. And so it doesn't have to be that corporate bitch. It could just be somebody they've done really well, but now I kind of want to see what it's going to take to get to the next level.
Right.
And that's where performance branding can really help you, is what are the kinds of things I need to insert myself on, just projects or visibility that I need to gain with others, and just knowing that. So again, I'm real clear how my performance adds to the benefit and the value of the organization.
Right. And keep in mind too, because we talk a lot about coaches here on this program, or coaching, I'll say, because it doesn't matter at what stage of your career you are. You need to have someone in your corner that is kind of helping you and pointing out to you kind of the direction to go in and those things to avoid, and then how to move forward and how to adjust. And it doesn't mean that, you necessarily have to want to be the CEO of a company. People will say to me, well, I'm not looking to go into the boardroom, or I'm not looking to take over the CEO position. And it's like, that has nothing to do with it. I mean, life is one big classroom. I mean, if you've given up wanting to change and grow and evolve and learn, you might as well be dead, is the way I see it. Seriously. So, what executive coaches and coaching and leadership development and performance branding does, it allows you to take yourself to the next level. Next level does not mean or have to mean the next promotion, the next salary bump, the next boardroom. It could simply mean that you want to just go to the next stage of who you are.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I think that's critical to understand, because I think too many of us, I'll hear arguments like, well, I'm not interested in, going to the boardroom or being a big CEO or even being a vice president or even being a manager. And it's like, that has nothing to do with it.
That's very true.
That has nothing to do with it. Okay, so we're listening to Shelley and the Bitch Radio. You are. We're on it. But anyway, and I'm all pumped up now. I'm all revved up with performance branding. And we're talking to Shelley Hammell of Sage Alliance Inc. here in Atlanta, although she works with clients all over the world. So segueing from that, we talked about the fact that you do corporate, you work with corporate clients, and we even talked about the different functional areas with basically everywhere within a corporate business. But what type of clients are you able to share with us?
So I work with, clients all over the world. So without naming them.
Any particular industries, any particular size?
The industry really doesn't matter and size doesn't matter. It's really working with high potential individuals that are looking for the opportunities to continue enhancing their careers. Typically the people I work with are the people getting ready for the next step. And I will tell you, typically when I'm brought in, I'd say 99% of giving myself that 1% leeway, 99% of the people that I work with will in fact get promoted in the next 12 to 18 months.
Nice.
And really, if you know what you want, you're clear about that. I'm again typically brought in by the boss or HR, but companies all over the world, typically high potentials, and not just coaching, but team building and group coaching. I had a group of women, 4 women in fact, that had just been promoted to director level, and they were navigating a tough corporation where there weren't too many women. In fact, they were the only 4. And so they needed some help, and they had the same challenges. So we did group coaching, which really enabled us to share ideas amongst themselves and help them all then focus on their specific areas.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thrive. I'd much rather be the only woman in the room, quite honestly. At the same time, though, a lot of women don't. And yet that's the situation that they're in. So I think what also Shelley's stressing is, if that's the situation you find yourself in, why beat your head against the wall? Why not find and engage someone and learn those strategies and those approaches that'll make you so much more effective, and actually, you'll like getting up in the morning and, going to work, as opposed to too many of us, get up in the morning, hate Monday mornings, and they just spend all week looking for a Friday night at 5 o'clock. We work way too hard and way too long, and especially if you're entrepreneurs or even in senior positions, you're working all the time. Might as well find the strategies and the approaches and the individuals, like a Shelley, that can help you kind of ensure that you're going about it the way you need to. And we talk a lot, Shelley, as you know, here about women elevating, and we all want, and it's not a feminist thing, it's just because that's what you want. And she talked about you needing to own and you needing to kind of get visibility for the talents and the skills that you have. And part of that is the fact that if you have goals and dreams, then you need to go and pursue them. And yet if you're not comfortable with that, then, somebody like a Shelley can help you with whatever those ambitions and those goals. And ambition's not a bad word, by the way. Whatever they are, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's most important is, if you're going to spend this, we talk a lot about, you have one time in this life, it goes really, really fast, and why not live it as fully and as completely as possible? Yay! All right, performance branding, Shelley Hammell, and okay, we have a couple of minutes. What would you kind of sum up, and what would you say? What would you make sure that whoever's listening, that they take on as a result of now learning a great deal more about performance branding?
Yeah, I think to me the win here is, now what are you going to do with this? So sounds good, right? Listen, feel pumped up, but what am I going to do with this? So I really want to challenge all your listeners. One, go out and ask the question.
Yeah.
So do an assessment, do your own 360, ultimately get some feedback. So that would be my number one challenge. Secondly, look for those common themes. Are there any surprises? And again, it's usually in the good stuff, not in the bad stuff. But again, how's my approach working? Is it aligned with the corporate values? Getting a lot of clarity about that. And then really put together an action plan. And you can do that with the people that give you feedback. And there's so many different ways. I've got some things again on my website, but a simple way is start, stop, continue. It's the simplest way, which is, and you can ask people this that gave you feedback, what are some things that you would like to see me start doing to, again, the client Bernadette who was a little too aggressive, what are some things I should start doing? So maybe connecting more with people. So what are some things that I should simply stop doing? And find out what those things are. And then ultimately, what should I continue doing? Because there's stuff that's great, that's going really well, and we want, from a performance perspective, we want that to continue. Right. So real simple. I've got other resources available to people if you're interested on my website that can kind of step you through some of these things, but just real easy way, start, stop, continue doing.
Right. And remind everyone, only because I look down and I don't, oh yes I do. All right, her email address, should you want to reach out to her directly, is shammell@thesagealliance.com. All right, Hammell, that's 2 M's and 2 L's, at sagealliance.com. And then, of course, Twitter, Facebook, you just Google, you'll find her. But most definitely link in, and as a reminder, make sure you send a personal message that, hey, Shelley, I saw you or heard you on Shane the Bitch Radio. You looked great, sounded great, and let's link in together. I want to thank you so much. This was great, absolutely great.